Well, I did it. I actually finally did it. Today we're going to be talking about several reasons why you should put braid on your spinning reels, and I will be the first to admit that it took me a lot of years to get to this point. Now, I've put braided line on bait casters for a long time and used fluorocarbon or monofilament leaders, but I just started doing this. Now, I've had the opportunity to work literally hundreds of retail events, and I've sold many reels at these events, working behind the counter at the reel bar. And with bait casters, when a customer comes in and buys a bait caster, maybe it's 40–50% of the time that they will have somebody at the store go ahead and spool them up with braid, and about the other half of the time they'll put mono or fluorocarbon on. But as far as spinning reels, when somebody buys a spinning reel at the store and they go ahead and have an employee there spool it up, I honestly can't think of one time when they had braid put on their spinning reel. Well, today I want to go over a few reasons why I think that all anglers should. If you want some more information on the differences between monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braided line, I'm going to have a link to that video at the end, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. The first reason, and probably the biggest factor why I switched from all fluorocarbon or even monofilament to going to braid with a fluoro leader on my spinning reels, is because I was sick and tired of dealing with line twist. Even if you're very careful when you put the line on your spinning reel and it comes off counterclockwise, or you go ahead and flip the spool when you see the line start to twist, I don't care what you do, eventually line twist is going to be an issue on your spinning reel, and that can really come about quickly depending on the types of lures that you used. If they're not rigged straight, they're coming through the water, twisting. Drop shot is notorious for putting line twist into your line, and I know I use like a swivel a lot of times in my drop shot, but that's the biggest reason that I switched to this. Braided line has zero, or as close to zero, memory in it as you can possibly get. So I went and I put on here some 10-pound braided line in this high-vis yellow. I really like the bright color now where I can see it. And then I put a leader on there that is anywhere from 6 to 10 feet long. I didn't want the knot to get down into the spool, so I made sure I had the original knot up in here somewhere closer to the end. You don't want that knot to get down in there. So the 6-foot leader, 7-foot, 8-foot, somewhere in there is what works out really good. But now I have, when I cast, I have no issues with line twist whatsoever. So that's definitely the first and the major reason that I switched to putting braid on my spinning reel. The second reason is pretty impressive, and we'll show you here in the footage, is the length of the casts that you can make with braided line is crazy. I mean, I've just got a little Ned rig on here with about the lightest weight that you can get, and I can cast this thing so far. And the reason the braided line casts so much farther is because it's not dealing with that line twist and that added friction as it goes through the eyes. It just spools through the eyes so nice. Even with the smallest flip of the wrist, you can really send this lure a long ways. So any lure that you put on your spinning equipment is going to cast much better with braided line. The third reason is sensitivity. I don't think it's a surprise that braid is way more sensitive than monofilament or fluorocarbon. If you fish with braid on your bait cast equipment, you know what I'm talking about. By putting braided line on a spinning rod, your connection with the lure, especially when you're using very light lures, is absolutely incredible. I can put this Ned rig out there, and just my connection and understanding what's going on under the water is so much better. So putting braided line on your spinning reel is just going to make the sensitivity just ridiculously good. You're going to be shocked at how many more bites you actually feel when you put braided line on there. One of the major reasons that I hear people talk against the braided line, and I was this way when I was much younger as well, is the expense. It's not unusual to pay $25 for a spool that's about 150 yards. It's really expensive, especially compared to monofilament. But the nice thing about this is it's going to be on there all season. I can put it on in January, take it off in December, and it's going to be fine all season. Its durability is incredible. So I had a 150 yard spool, and I put about 75 yards on 2 spinning reels. So for $25 I was able to spool up 2 reels, but I know this is it. I don't have to spool it up anymore. I will be changing my leader out, obviously, as I retie and shorten it up, or maybe if I break something off or want to change the pound test of my leader. But I know right now with this spooled up, that's it for the year. So that makes it a pretty good investment. The last reason that I really like putting this on here, the braided line on the spinning equipment, is because of the high-vis colors that are available. A lot of people use the high-vis yellow. When you're using super light lures and light line, oftentimes those bites are so subtle. We barely feel them. And with the high-vis yellow on here, I can now see my line twitch or see it bounce when a fish takes it, and oftentimes that is my indication that there's a bite, as opposed to actually feeling it. If you've got a big old bass down there, a 4 or 5 pounder, and they just inhale it, you might see the line jump more than you actually feel the bite. So the high-vis color is definitely a huge improvement when it comes to detecting strikes or knowing when a fish has got your lure. So that is the 5th and the final reason that I really enjoy using braided line on my spinning gear. Now, as far as spooling up braided line on a spinning reel, there's a couple ways that we can go about this, and maybe you've got a great tip that you could share in the comments down below. Please let us know. When we're putting it on bait casters, we understand that we put a mono backing so that braid doesn't slip. It's very slick, and it can slip on the spool. Well, with many spinning reels, they don't hold just a ton of line anyway, and you may not want to put mono backing on there because of how much room it's going to take. You sure can, but I know a lot of anglers that do not like to do that. So what you can do is go ahead and put it around the spool, tie your knot, and the 2 things that I've seen done the most is, one, you could put a little dab of super glue right there on the knot to hold it in place, or you could take a small piece of tape and wrap it around the spool as well to hold it in place. Remember, the whole theory and idea is there just to keep it from spinning on the spool. If you get down to that point, odds are you're going to have some problems, fish get away or whatever anyway. But I actually put some tape on this one here, and it worked out really well. Then as far as the actual spooling goes, I made sure that was coming off counterclockwise, but I'm very careful as I'm watching the line come on. I'm observing how it's coming off that spool. If you see that line do a twist, go ahead and take that spool and just flip it over. Go the other way with it. And then you see it again, flip it back over, flip it back over. And that works really well, especially with the braided line. It's gonna last you all season. So that works out really nice. Now, we mentioned earlier the leader, anywhere from 6 to a 10-foot leader. I use an Albright knot. I know a lot of anglers use an FG knot or a double uni knot. I really like the Albright knot. The more I've used it, the more confidence I have gotten in it, and it's really pretty easy to tie. It's not very difficult. I know the FG knot can get real tricky. Seems like you got to have 3 arms instead of 2 to go ahead and put that one together, but I've been pretty impressed with the Albright knot. I will actually drop a link down below in the description for a website that's called animatedknots.com. No, they're not a sponsor of mine or anything like that. They're just a really helpful website, and they have all kinds of knots, and it walks you through it frame by frame and actually moves and manipulates the line so you can see exactly how your knot should go. So it's a pretty helpful website. That's animatedknots.com, and I'll go ahead and drop that down below. Now, hey, if you have some more questions about the differences between monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braided line, make sure that you click on this video right here, and it will go over all of those. And don't forget to go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life for the bass fishing life. I'm your host, Steve Rogers.